I want to understand why you guys use signs pointing to this building saying...
Because they perform abortions here.
Okay. Number one, the Bible says not to judge. What is that doing?
Good morning. I've got some helpful history for today. Yesterday, the Supreme Court said abortion is not mentioned in the Constitution, and so thereby is not protected.
Here is what you need to know from the majority opinion.
Turns out because abortion was free and accessible in the colonial days.
Welcome to another episode of The Fog of Truth. As we all know, the Supreme Court came down with a decision that most of us are disagreeing with, and as we did last week when we talked about guns, I think it's really incumbent upon us to look at documentaries and what they can tell us about this issue. So, Justina, why don't you start us off?
Exactly what you said. Overturning of Roe v. Wade is a historic step back to our rights, and I think this is a very good time for all of us to look back on documentaries that have been made over time about this particular issue in our country. And I am certain that we will have a topic every week now, because this particular moment in history is now going to be the beginning of a possible avalanche of changes to our rights.
So, Justina, what you're saying is that the Supreme Court is changing the whole context and methodology of our podcast.
Yes. And that is the most important takeaway last week.
So, John, what documentary about abortion rights have you watched, and what do you have to say about it?
Okay, the film that I watched was probably the oldest of the group, a film called 12th in Delaware, which came out in 2010, directed by Heidi Ewing and Rachel Grady. It pretty much is the precursor to a lot of films that come since that time. It's a classic. The story of two separate corners. There is an abortion clinic on one corner, and there is a fake pregnancy center on the other corner.
We are actually on opposite sides of the street. Abortion clinic, pregnancy care center, darkness and light.
If they would just stay on their side of the street and do what they've got to do.
Walking into an abortion clinic, you're not going to get the truth, you're going to get a sales pitch.
They promise her everything in the world to get her to keep it.
This battle is just so vicious.
What is great about this documentary, and it's still, rewatching, it still just nails you to the wall in the classic idea of letting people hang themselves by their own words and actions. And you don't have to comment, you don't have to weigh in, you don't have to tip the scales, as they say. You just let these people literally say and do the things that make your argument for you. So we see where they're handing out to young women who are trying to make this decision, that give the false information that abortions cause breast cancer.
All the little brochures that they hand out on the sidewalk that we have kept or just collected over the years. Complications of abortion, possible immediate complications, excessive bleeding, possibly causing removal of the uterus and a resulting inability to have children. What language? Breast cancer. There's been so many studies done on the breast cancer thing, and they all deny that. And one of the physicians that I've worked with for many, many years says that if that's true, everybody who has a miscarriage would get breast cancer, and that's just not true. I don't know where they get their medical information from, but I know that's totally wrong.
You see the emotional terrorism of making them hold like little tiny fetus figurines with little faces on them. They have an ultrasound, and they print out the words, "Hi, Mommy," and "Hi, Daddy" on the ultrasound, which they make the women take with them. You even have the classic aggro male person, I would say character, except it's a real person, who's out there marching up and down the sidewalk and threatening women, and actually follows the car with the doctor to see where he lives so they can continue to terrorize and try to intimidate them there.
then I was thinking of doing is making a fairly big billboard, probably like 4x4, with a picture of the abortionist and say, this doctor performs abortions. I'm not worried about the risks. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm not concerned about that because this is worth it.
It's so clear. And that was made 12 years ago. And now we're seeing the results of that. So 12th in Delaware, it's on HBO Max. I could not recommend it more highly.
Well, thank you for that. All right. I want to talk about two films, and both of these were films that we showed at our festival. The first one I want to talk about is called Vessel. This film is on Tubi. Yay, Tubi. Tubi allows us to see things for free that otherwise might not be available. And this film is special because it shows a path. It follows a woman who gets this idea that in countries where abortion is illegal, if you can get a boat and go into international waters and bring women into international waters, you can perform abortions on the boat.
It all started when I was working as a ship's doctor in countries where abortion was illegal. I'd seen a lot of women brought in because of illegal abortions. I could not observe that and just let it happen. So we built a mobile clinic so we could sail to international waters and legally help the women with a safe abortion.
To the harbor! We are here in solidarity with women who have been denied their human rights. Women have really a basic human right to be able to decide what is happening with their own bodies.
The boat. And so they form this organization called Women on the Waves, and they find a way in places like Ireland and some places in Latin America where they can do that. Obviously, there are protesters, and it's all kinds of craziness happens.
The ship is a symbol of freedom, has always been. It's so clear if you speak to women what is really at stake and what's happening and why.
But then in the latter part of the film, they start to understand that we could do that, and then we can also get people the abortion pill, which is the first time that I found out that this thing was a thing. And I think this film points to a few ways in which we can move forward. I can imagine going into international waters in the United States and trying to perform things that way.
Here in Texas, major abortion laws are dominating the news cycle.
13 clinics were forced to close, leaving just 8 in all of Texas.
The eyes of the world are on the border town.
On that side, the abortion clinic. Over here, the anti-abortion clinic. Only a fence physically separates the two institutions.
The other film is called On the Divide, and On the Divide is currently available on PBS's website, and we'll have a link to that on the show notes. And On the Divide is somewhat similar to the film that John was talking about, 12th in Delaware, in that it shows what's happening on the ground. And it shows both sides, but in a different way. In John's films, there were two clinics side by side. In this case, this is the last clinic in McAllen, Texas.
I have Jesus in my life. I feel like I have a purpose.
Hi, good morning. I'm a clinic escort for Women's Health, and we have some protesters.
I started providing clinic defense when the protesters started amping up their tactics.
We're all praying for you.
You're gonna regret walking in there.
Keep the peace, okay?
What keeps us going is that this is what the patients have to face, and they should not face this alone.
And what we see in a very verite style are people who work in the clinic who are supporting of rights and people who are opposed, and particularly one woman who is young and tattooed and has really interesting attitude and is struggling in her own self to figure out what to do, but she is protesting against the clinic.
If you would have looked at me in my old life, you wouldn't have thought anything good.
So you really get a sense hands-on of what's happening. And the other thing that's really great about the film, to me, the most interesting character, is there's an old guy who's a security guard for the clinic, and he is the everyday man responding to the craziness that's going on.
I'm Catholic. I pray every day before I come here. Ever since I started working here, the church turned me away. My conscience is clean with him.
People seek abortions for a multitude of reasons.
El doctor le dice que no puede perder al niño, se puede morir de ella.
I know what that desperation feels like. I just wasn't strong enough to have an abortion at 19.
And I think the film is definitely worth seeing. And in the context of what's going on, watching this film really gives you a sense of where we were a month ago. And it'll give you a sense of how things might get out of hand soon after that.
I can't shake the feeling that something really bad's gonna go down.
911, what's your emergency?
They attacked me.
We're all very angry, which is good because it's anger that gets things changing.
Justina, what do you have to talk about?
So mine is Jackson. It was released in 2016. You can watch it on HBO Max and Amazon Prime. It is set in Jackson, Mississippi in 2012 with the last abortion clinic in Mississippi.
Tonight, we travel to the last abortion clinic in Mississippi.
The state requires us to do some very specific things, but I think some of the information I'm required to tell you is designed to discourage you from deciding to have an abortion.
Governor Phil Bryant signed what's known as a trap law.
We want Mississippi to be abortion-free.
Some of the people who judge you for making this very important decision would have a fit if someone tried to control their lives in the same way.
It follows the clinic, the woman who leads the clinic, Shannon Brewer, who's an amazing woman, but also on the other side of that, the pro-life organization. And Barbara Devers follows her getting funds and helping a young woman named April who's on her 5th child. And this film also does not give an opinion, but very astutely shows me why I have my opinion.
They're called crisis pregnancy centers, a key part of the anti-abortion agenda.
Women are made to protect and to guard and to die for their babies.
I got pregnant when I was 16, and I made myself drink a whole bunch of Clorox and water, and I bled through. And all I would have had 6 kids.
This is your baby right here. You want one with high mom on it?
I don't think you can withhold sex education from people and then also withhold the option for abortion.
There's like a 20% failure rate of condoms.
If a condom's used correctly, it's 98% effective.
Oh, I don't believe that.
This is an issue that predominantly affects poor Black women.
And what's difficult is it starts with a reporter saying, because Roe v. Wade will never get overturned, this is what happens in states. And already that hasn't aged well, obviously. And so it's very difficult to watch as a woman how far backwards we've gotten because we're watching a documentary about going backwards. And we've actually gone farther than that than where we've gone.
We're talking about the Mississippi state law.
We have got to take shame out of the word abortion.
I can't say that we're pro-life until we take action on it.
The state's only abortion clinic vandalized.
If something happens here, something happens to this staff, I feel responsible for all this shit.
Keep wanting it to get easier.
Man, fill you up with kids if you don't give a fuck about damn one of them.
What you are doing is premeditated murder.
So I basically, as I watched it, turned it into a drinking game of when Barbara Devers says the quiet things out loud. So I want to give you a couple of my drinking game wins of times Barbara Devers said things that make you go, oh, they never hid the agenda. There is a point where April is worried about having the capacity to raise a 5th child. Of course, money being an issue. And Devers actually says, don't worry, your son is going to be a big old football player and make you a lot of money. I'll stop. I have 15 of things that she said where I was like, this woman, she's treating April like a pawn for her agenda. And the film ends with a very glaring example of that, where April has done everything she can to be a good mother and be a good person, and she is still treated as simply the vehicle for children. to be born.
I believe in abortion because no woman should have to feel the way that I felt.
Yeah.
So, Justine, what you're saying is that this opinion has led you to drink.
Yes, yet again, it has led me to drink.
And I think that the facts are very sobering, and how we deal with it may not be. Thank you both for giving us some insight here. Let me just recommend a few others that we really haven't talked about. There's a film called The Janes, which is on HBO, and After Tiller, which is also a very classic and important film to watch, is available for free on Tubi. Yay, Tubi. And then there's a new film that is not out yet that played at South by Southwest called Shouting Down Midnight. Have either of you heard about this film?
No.
Okay, so this film is about Wendy Davis and when she stood up in the state legislature and tried to kill the bill. But it's really wonderful, and hopefully it will be out soon. So that's something to look forward to. So all of you who are disappointed and angry and just feel like everything is lost, watching these documentaries will just make you feel worse in a way.
Oh,
But
I do. Actually, that reminds me, I do want to say one thing. If you want hope, TikTok has numerous creators who are there to keep you informed.
Surprise! Welcome to America. Abortion is all about money. Abortion access isn't just about bodily autonomy, but it's also about economic security and opportunity. Legal access to abortion increases women's probability of graduating college by 72%. Delaying motherhood by 1 year due to access to legal abortion increases women's wages by 11%. And on top of that, legal abortion decreases the percentage of children who grow up in poverty and improves future life outcomes, including college attendance rates. Legal abortion helps women and our society overall become more educated, higher earners in better financial positions. But let me be clear, the same people who stacked the SCOTUS bench do not want this for their communities. They want babies born into poverty. They want single mothers to struggle to support their children. Why? Because it keeps the working class working.
I watch Under the Desk News, who is amazing at keeping everyone informed on everything that's happening state by state. And there are TikTok creators who are seeing education, thoughts, and solutions. So don't lose hope. Give 60 seconds to a TikTok creator.
yes, absolutely. And one other thing that I think is intuitively obvious, but worth saying, vote and get everybody to vote. The only possible way to change things is to get everybody who is really annoyed at this to go to the ballot box. And I think that's what we really need to do.
In November, I want you to vote as if women's lives depend on it, because they will.
Well, with that, we will close this another special edition of The Fog of Truth, dealing with what's going on, the issues of the day. Let us hope that next week we do not have to have another special episode where we react to another really annoying opinion coming back down from the Supreme Court, but there probably will be. So, The Fog of Truth musical theme is composed by Jeremiah Moore, composed for the podcast and used by permission. If you'd like to contact us, please send us an email at disinfo@fogoftruth.com. Thank you guys, and I'm sorry that we had to be so depressed, but Documentaries help shed a light and give us some perspective. Thank you, and watch on.